My pithy bit of advice would be like, what's the point in having a business unless it's going to make you happy?
So do you think there's a particular founder mindset?
Being vision driven, I think that's a big thing with most business owners. They've got a vision.
There's this paradox that as business owners, we are much more comfortable with risk than the average population.
Mind yourself that it's a business problem. It's a first world problem. It's part of the process. Hello, Dave.
Thanks for coming in. Made it all the way here from Droitwich.
Yeah, done the long cross-country slog.
We have, yeah. People beating a path from far and wide to come and see this studio from the inside.
Yeah.
So what's up?
Not much. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Right.
It's nice to come to Shrewsbury.
Shrewsbury, thank you for
on the same river
that.
as Worcester.
It is, yeah.
River Severn.
I joined a mate who was canoeing the length of the Severn for charity this summer. I just joined him for the first 2 days. So he had to cycle up to the source of the Severn right up in Wales, then took the canoe from Poole Quay, the other side of Welsh Pool, came down to Shrewsbury in a couple of days, and then went on through Iron Bridge and down to you.
Wow.
And beyond.
Wow.
I don't think he got to Bristol, but he got down to about Gloucester, wherever it gets a bit choppy.
I was gonna say that my river knowledge is weak, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't know where the Severn ends. Is it
Bristol?
Severn Estuary, right?
Yeah,
Bristol.
That
yeah,
works.
Obviously, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. That's where something like I don't know how much percentage of Britain's wool used to come down from Wales down all the way down the Severn.
You've got a history brain, have you?
No, not at all. I wish I had. I've lamented that before on podcasts up till now. But I did go on one of the town walking tours by our town crier, who's a bit of an expert on these things.
Okay.
And he points out all the little artefacts along the river's edge, which are hangovers from that time. And instead of having horse-drawn barges back in the days before steam and all that sort of stuff, they were all pulled by men. So the towpaths are a bit narrow and they clamber over the bridges and all that sort of thing. But the problem they had is that they'd all get down to Bristol, having pulled their barge full of wool down and sold it and got given their bonus and whatever. And then the Navy would give them the King's shilling and grab them and send them off to sea. And there wouldn't be enough men to pull the barges back upstream again.
Right, okay.
So then they had to recruit a load of, Navy rejects maybe, and get them all to pull the empty barges.
The economy of the wool system.
But given you think wool probably doesn't, I suppose it weighs quite a lot when you bundle it together. But you think they're going back empty, but you're going upstream. That's hard.
Yeah, that's going to be harder.
Anyway, there we go. So a bit of local history for you.
There we go.
All that.
There we go.
We also get something like 70% of North Wales's rainfall come through Shrewsbury, which is why we're always getting flooded. Because it doesn't rain here very much, but it rains upstream and we get it when it
You've
floods
got a
down.
brain for facts.
Love my facts. Yeah, anyway, should we do a podcast?
Yeah, maybe.
Great, brilliant. Hello and welcome to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow, where every week we try and come up with something useful, interesting, or just a bit wacky for owners and managers of small and medium-sized enterprises. And this week, we're lucky enough to have a guest in the studio.
Hello.
Mike. Hello, Mike. Introduce you in a minute.
Yep.
This is episode 145, but more significantly, it's our third anniversary.
Yeah, I feel like I need a party popper.
Well, more importantly, we need a cake.
Yeah, and a cake. Yeah, that's the most important piece.
And a beer would have been, a little fitting, isn't it? But we'll do that afterwards. You won't be on camera, but we'll celebrate in style off camera to mark the third anniversary of this amazing event. I can't believe we've been doing it for 3 years.
Very consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you think if we're only on episode 145, why aren't we on episode 156? That being 3 lots of 52. But I think we probably did give ourselves a week off at Christmas a couple of times.
Yeah, maybe, having some little periods of time off to...
Yeah. Anyway, kudos to us for sticking at it. And it's been tricky some weeks to keep it going, squeeze it into the calendar when everybody else wants a bit of your time.
Staying motivated, staying consistent.
We have, yes, good. So anyway, third anniversary, very exciting, episode 145. Just what we normally do at the beginning of these podcasts is just a quick recap of what people have missed in the last few episodes, just so they can dial back. And you've just come in at the back end of a series of actually 7 episodes, all on the topic of the 6-box model. So you think, hang on a minute, how come we did 7 episodes on the 6-box model? The first one, way back in episode 137 or whatever it was an overview of the whole thing. And then we did an episode each for each of the boxes.
Yeah.
So what is the 6-box model? It's just our way of looking at the world, how all of marketing and sales fits together. So 3 different boxes to do with how you get your leads, inbound, outbound, and referrals.
Yep.
One of them to do with what happens if that lead comes in and they're not ready to buy yet. That's our nurture loop. Mm-hmm. Then if they are ready to buy, you've got a pipeline box and you have to manage your pipeline, selling. And then the 6th box is looking after your customers when you got them. Making sure they stay happy, you're delivering well, repeat buy, refer, and don't churn. And there you go. That's it.
We can tell you worked in manufacturing, you process brain.
Yeah. So what, as by absolute by luck, and I have to convince everybody here, this was not at all planned. We've now got a topic today to talk with you about, which is about owners and stuff. But your expertise is around what happens next after the 6-box model. So you win your customer, and then the salespeople and the marketing go off and do the next one, leaving the rest of the organisation to pick up what's been sold and run with it.
Yep.
And that's the whole operations life. So you're a COO, fractional COO for lots of different businesses that you help, especially in the SME space like us.
Yeah, 10 to 30 employees is the kind of sweet spot for me.
Yeah. So what's your business called?
So we've got Better Happy and the Fractional Integrators. We operate under two names, but it's the same thing. So Fractional Integrators is when we work with companies on a more one-to-one fractional basis.
Yeah.
Better Happy is more of our community-based model where we bring owners together and talk about strategy.
Yeah. That's, I think when we first met, you saw what we were doing with the podcast. You found us through, I think, Instagram or whatever it was came our way, and we had a few chats, and we thought there's a great overlap here. What you do is so in our wheelhouse in terms of how we feel about SMEs. We really are drawn to other people who've got a real thing about trying to support SMEs as a principle. It's a very underserved part of the market. Everyone thinks about either the big companies or the one-man bands, and there's this very lonely place in the middle.
Yeah, agreed. I think lonely place in the middle was the right term. Although I think with AI and technology, I think SMEs will become an even bigger part of the economy. I think it'll become more normal now, and figuring out how to thrive in that zone is going to be the key.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And funny, what I found is almost by accident again, but it is an amazing tool that everybody could use. But for some reason, SMEs are much more able to use it purely because the big companies, certainly the ones we work with, are putting all sorts of safeguards and rules and procedures, and they're being safe, fair enough, they've got big companies to worry about. Yeah. But they are, as a result, slowing down the adoption of how you could use this stuff.
Yeah, they've got bureaucracy in the way, haven't they? Whereas you're small and your SMEs have the advantage of agility. Yeah. You can be more agile because you
and maybe not always a good thing, but they're probably a bit fast and loose with their risk management as well.
Yeah.
So they don't possibly always think things through. And if there's a shorter route from A to C without going through B, then they'll take it. And most of the time they're okay. But it does mean we've got this higher adoption rate a bit within SMEs.
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons, isn't there, at all sizes of business. And it's figuring out how to leverage the pros of agility without the cons of...
Well, if that helps level up the playing field, then great. Let's see SMEs grow. It's a massive part of our economy, isn't it? 65% of employees or GDP or something. It's a huge percentage. Yeah. Good. So that's probably going to come out anyway in how we talk about it. And I wanted to, for those of you watching online, just give a bit of a plug for Mike's book.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for bringing a copy of that in, The Happy Business Revolution. That's going to come out as well because you've really talked in here about that sort of sinful concept that you are allowed to actually enjoy running a business.
Yeah, and it might even do better if you enjoy running
Scary thought. And yet I don't think many people feel the two are necessarily compatible all the time. You're not here to enjoy yourself. Get on with your job.
And I think that's a very British thing as well, isn't it? That if we're enjoying ourselves, we're not working hard enough.
Yeah, that's right. Can't be working. Get back to it. Yeah. So that'll no doubt come out through the thread of what we're going to talk about. Yep. But you and I had a bit of a chat the other week about a good topic to maybe talk about in a podcast. Yep. And we both come across business owners and have to deal with them at a very personal level, in the sense of maybe sometimes confronting some of their hopes and fears and frustrations, and we often become confidants, don't we, as to why is it that my team aren't doing this, or what would you suggest about that, or can you help me recruit another one of those? Mm-hmm. And so you get a bit of an insight into the psyche of the business owner, and you came up with this idea, and I thought that's brilliant. Let's have a bit of a chat, compare notes on the psyche of the business owner. So all those business owners are listening in now thinking, what are they going to say? And is it based on me? I bet you are. I know where he's got that story from.
Yeah. And I get that when I put posts out, a lot of my clients say, have you written that specifically about me? And I'm like, well, no, we're all you're all the same.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not specifically about you. But yeah, they often think, oh, you've written that piece exactly about me and this issy that we've been dealing with. I'm like, no, it's the same across the board.
Don't worry, it's quite typical. Yeah. So do you think there's a particular founder mindset? Do you think it's fair to say that the people we deal with who are entrepreneurs and have grown a business, do they fit into some sort of range of personalities?
I think it takes, I'm sure there's lots of different types of founder, but I think generally speaking, you've got to have a unique set of principles or ways of thinking to even want to venture into business. And especially to get traction. You've got to be insanely hardworking, more so than normal people, to a point of being borderline obsessive, I would say. Most business owners. Insanely hardworking, willing to delay gratification. You go into a business knowing you're not going to make a lot of money for a while.
Or indeed ever.
Or potentially ever. Yeah, exactly.
You're taking a gamble, aren't you?
Yeah, it's all a gamble, isn't it? So there's an element of being willing to take risk, being able to delay gratification, being obsessive, being vision driven. I think that's a big thing with most business owners. They've got a vision. Like, we're very focused in the future, and we're willing to take on some discomfort in the now to create a better future.
Do you think that's more true of founders as opposed to business owners in the broader sense, that may well have either inherited the business or done an MBO or even an MBI? They've come into it after the founder set it up. Do you think there's a particular founder mindset that is that driven one you've just described? Or do you think even if you come into a business later as an owner, you end up adopting that even if you didn't set the business up?
No, I think you're right. I think founders, that's going to be more reminiscent of founders. Whereas if you've got more business-minded in regards to the discipline of business people that are going into businesses to run them more efficiently, to run them more effectively, to bind them, to grow them, that's going to be a potentially slightly different mindset. And if you've inherited it, obviously there's so many factors there, isn't there?
Oh, well, that's a whole series of episodes itself. The second, third generation business owner model.
I think founder-wise is probably what I'm talking about there.
So even opening it out then to the broader business owners, whilst they may not have had the same particular set of characteristics that get something going, there's still something about them. Now, maybe they have to learn it or they inherit it, but something about a business owner changes their behaviour than if they were an employee. Maybe it's just the weight of responsibility or that having to burden the risk like you talked about.
I suppose it's drive, isn't it? I suppose whether you're founding a business or buying into a business or purchasing, you're subscribing to potentially higher rewards for higher work. So you're willing to work on a results-based basis. And a lot of most people don't want that, the majority. Most people don't want to, they want security and they'd rather have less result for more security. Whereas I think if you're in the business world, you want the higher result potentially, whether that's money and profit or whether that's purpose and making a difference, and you're willing to work hard for that. Whereas in a job, I think generally speaking, you don't want as much as that because you want more security.
Yeah, and there's not an easy transition. I think it's very hard if you're in stable employment with a salary and you're paying your mortgage off to suddenly, even if you've got the desire, to suddenly be able to manage the transition to say, right, I'm going to give that up now, that safety blanket, security net, whatever, and I'm going to go and do my own thing.
Yeah,
I think that a lot of the people who move into that space, and myself included, it was because the change was forced upon you at the time. You come out of one job and that's the decision point you've got. Do I now set up on my own or just go and get another job again?
Yeah, I can't remember who it was. I'd love to be able to have a photographic memory and just call up the person in the quote. But I definitely remember listening to somebody saying that a lot of the business owners they know were accidental business owners. They kind of got pushed into owning a business, which I found quite interesting because that's not my case. Like I kind of chose to go into business. But listening to that made me think, oh, okay, that's interesting. A lot of people...
Yeah, and the people you've met maybe do fit that profile more.
Yeah, potentially.
In business, yeah. And how much then, so what you talk about and you see there in the owner, founder or just inherited owner, their mindset, their personality, how much would you say that copies across to the whole organisation? What's the connection there?
Well, I think that's the challenge a lot of the time. I think owners don't realise that their teams think differently to them and have different motivations to them. I think at a fundamental level, all humans want to do good work. None of us wake up in the morning and think,
I want to do a bad job.
Yeah, I can't wait to go and do the minimum required to not get fired today. We all want to do good work, and I think that's ingrained in our evolution. We want to contribute to the
we've all met one or two that maybe do, but they're in the absolute vast minority.
Yeah, and even then, you think, well, is there a mental health issue? Like, why would you not want to do good work? I think
something's gone wrong somewhere, isn't it? It's almost like they're trying to seek revenge or,
bitterness. There's
level up a score or something.
There's a fault in the system. Yeah.
But as you say, most people want to come to work and do a good job.
Yeah, and I think the problem that owners have is that a lot of the time in businesses is obviously owners and founders and owners are very future focused, willing to work incredibly hard to get these big results in the future. Employees are a different mindset, and if the owner thinks that the team think like they do, it creates a lot of issues. Right. I notice, and that leads to operational issues because then you've got people that want to do good work, but the work's not being communicate it to them in a way that taps into their motivation. And then you have this friction between owner and leadership and operational team. You would have seen this in, back in the manufacturing days, that you have this friction between the two, but actually everybody wants to do a good job. We're just not going about it in the right way.
And that's not always, it's not financial necessarily, but you did describe there that one of the characteristics of an owner is that they're prepared to take short-term pain for longer-term gain, because for them there is this potential of longer-term gain. Maybe we can make profits and pay dividends, or maybe even sell the company or whatever, whereas lots of employees don't have any vision at all of that ever being a possibility in the future. They've not got an equity stake. Bonuses are more just part of salary package rather than, life-changing type stuff. So do you think it could be partially fixed by making some sort of, profit share or different, employee ownership trust or something which ties in the broader employee population into some future gain, therefore it being worth it? Or actually do you think there are too many other factors at play? They might leave that job, it may not pay out, they don't want the money, they want other things more. Do you think there's a disconnect, or do you think that would help? Yeah,
well, certainly I think it would help. I think it's complex. So I think it's Charlie Munger who said, show me the incentive and I'll show you the actions. Better than that. It's a better quote than that, but it's along those lines. So I think what we'll see in the future is more business, and we're already seeing actually more businesses tying employee performance to the performance of the business and giving them more incentive financially to want to perform. So I think we'll see more of that. But what I would also say is there's other factors at play that motivate people. It's not just incentive. It's not just money. And not all people are highly driven by money. If they were, we wouldn't have any teachers. We wouldn't have an army. We wouldn't have any police. So a lot of people are very actually driven by the purpose and the meaning of the work. So it's tapping into those elements as well. So yes, I think I know the incentive piece is a big one, but there's a large proportion of people that are at work that actually aren't that highly motivated by money outside of being able to afford a comfortable lifestyle.
Once you've got a certain amount. Exactly. I think there's some studies done on that. So given that we're talking today about the psychology of the business owner, how much of your work then when you're dealing with the operations teams, we talked earlier about that transition, orders get closed one, sales team disappear off and do their thing, and now you pick up what happens next. How much of dealing with this conflict that you describe, where the psyche of the owner isn't necessarily accounting for the fact that nobody's like them, how much of that do you try and fix with the owner and get them to acknowledge it, change it, whatever? Or how much do you work with the operations team just to say, well, you've got to accept it?
There's a business mentor that I've learned quite a lot of called Nick James, and he's got this quote: sell people what they want, then give them what they need. And I don't think any clients ever come to me and said, I've got issues with how I'm thinking about the business, and that's affecting the team. Can you come and help me fix it? So a lot of the time when my engagement initiates with a business owner, the problem they want to address is the team aren't performing consistently, operational issues. Really. And we're like, okay, so we'll start looking into that. And then very quickly what we'll often realize is that the owner's approach is damaging to the team. And I think maybe they do know that, but nobody wants to, there's a trust thing, you'll know this. There's a big trust thing when you're going into business with somebody. So I think there's a period of time where the owners want to get to know you and get to see if they can trust you to start being honest with you about what things are going on. But in answer to your question, a lot of it is the owner mindset, and it just takes a bit of time to get them to be open to sharing that and comfortable addressing it.
And there's presumably, and certainly from my experience, some of the traits I'm thinking of when you describe that, I'm thinking, I wonder what they, do they fall into groups here of what's going wrong in the head, if that's not too pejorative a way of describing it. But there's certainly a control bias that owners have. They feel they've got to have a handle on everything going on. And of course that doesn't work well, does it, if you've got a bigger team that you're delegating stuff? Do you come across that particular facet very often? Yeah,
very often. And actually when I think about this stuff a lot, and when I see that, I think, well, why is this happening? Why does that control piece come about? And what I recognise is mostly that's due to fear. Right. It's not because they genuinely want to control. It's because they're so fearful. When you own a business, and you all know this, and your listeners know this, it's a very unique situation psychologically. You're putting yourself out in front of people, and whether your brand of your business has got your face in it or not, it's your thing. So you're asking for money from people, which is a thing you only really do in business, which has its psychological impact, which is why sales is so important and understanding the process of sales. So you're putting yourself into this unique psychological situation, and it makes you very cautious of and nervous about things going wrong, because you think that's going to reflect poorly on you. It's your business. If a customer's unhappy and you've taken money off them, that gives us a very visceral kind of uncomfortable feeling. So what I've, and through personal experience as well, I'm sure you've experienced this, is that if there's a worry about things going wrong in your business and how that's going to reflect on you. So your response to that is to control, not because you want to control, but because you're so worried about anything going wrong. And then your kind of go-to is to just constantly step in and try and fix things if they're going wrong.
Well, I think you've mentioned two things there, and I'm not sure if they're the same thing or they are two different things. But one, you talk about just control because you're fearful of it going wrong. And maybe the owner mistakenly believes so, but they believe nevertheless that they know the answer. They know how to do this properly. Because when the business was small and there were only 3 of you or 5 of you or 10 of you, you did all the recruiting, you ordered the loo rolls, you made sure that the VAT was paid on time, you did all that stuff. As soon as other people do it, you think, well, I've been here, I know how that works. I can see the way you're doing it won't work. I've made that mistake before. And yet if you're trying to keep an eye on all those things that might go wrong, you go mad, right? There's just too much to do. You've got to let go and let people do things that might go wrong, because they're just going to make it go wrong like you did when you learned it. It's very hard, isn't it, to teach people stuff from your own mistakes. You learn so much more powerfully when you've made the mistake yourself. And perhaps that's a hard thing, I think, for an owner to get comfortable with, that some mistakes are going to get made again. That if I were doing them, wouldn't have gotten made. But I'm never going to grow this from a 5-person firm to a 50-person firm if I insist on double-checking everybody's work all the time.
For my clients, the thing that's helped with that exact scenario that you've just said is to get into this mindset of the purpose of your business. So with Wellmeadow, like if part of your purpose is to reach a certain amount of clients through your expertise and your knowledge and to help them grow their businesses through sales and marketing, well then in order to reach that volume of people, it's going to have to scale beyond a Dave, right? It has to. And for it to scale beyond a Dave, mistakes are going to have to be made. And we have to make peace with that decision, because our brain will always try to avoid the unknown and try and keep us in a zone that feels comfortable and safe. So we've got to be aware of that on a subconscious level. On my brain, from being a hunter-gatherer for 190,000 years, is telling me to avoid any kind of unnecessary risk, because when we were hunter-gatherers, it could have meant death. Now in business, it's not going to mean death, is it?
You might lose a client.
You might lose a client, you might get a bad review, you might upset somebody, but it's not going to mean death. But your brain's telling you it's got the same weight on a subconscious level. So we're like, I don't want to get other people to do stuff because they might mess it up. And if you do hire new people, I don't want any of these mistakes to happen because it's going to reflect poorly on me. But on an emotional level, that's like, I could die.
But there's a paradox there, isn't there? I take absolutely the inherited, evolutionary factors that are at play here. It's very hard to fight against them. As you say, there's a couple of 100,000 years worth of building it up. We can't just say to someone, buck your ideas up, think differently. Okay then. It doesn't quite work like that. But there's this paradox that as business owners, we are much more comfortable with risk than the average population. Not to say they're all gamblers, but you certainly calculate risk. You understand that an investment sum of money, maybe you go to the bank and take some money or invest in yourself, has the chance of giving a payback, but it might not, and you do all this. So we're accepting the fact that there might be some decisions we take that don't pay off. I'm going to spend in my sales world, spend too long trying to work an opportunity that I know hasn't qualified, and therefore I'm wasting my time. But this one I want, so I'll put a bit of extra time in it, and then I know I might not get it, and I've wasted time. So there's that comfort with risk. And yet on the other hand, what you've just described there is where the risk of delegating, at worst, might be a bad review. Maybe you lose a client, far end of the spectrum, but no one's going to die. It's not back to where we were before. So we're prepared to accept some risk on the one hand, and on the other hand, we're so guarding ourselves against that negative feeling, that really visceral feeling of the failure, that we don't delegate properly. And why can't a business owner, get those two thoughts in their head and say, well, I'm taking risks in this area. Why don't I just allow this to happen, even though it's a bit riskier?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm thinking as you're saying that, I'm like working through my brain. One of there's a great psychologist called Russ Harris, and he created something called ACT, Acceptance Commitment Therapy or Training. And he's got a book called The Happiness Trap, a great read. I would recommend everybody to read it.
The Happiness Trap.
The Happiness Trap. And he's done some really cool YouTube videos that explain human psychology through cool little cartoons. It's great marketing in short snippets. And one of the things that he highlights in one of his videos is that one of the highest fears and worst fears for humans is public speaking, and he talks about why that is, and he links it back to the psychology of we used to live in tribes to survive, hunter-gatherers, And if we got kicked out of the tribe, it basically meant death because you couldn't survive in the wild on your own. So it came with the risk of death. So we've developed this psychology to want to fit in to the tribe, which has developed behaviours like modesty, which can be unhelpful in business. So you've got like this modesty piece, but you've also got this fear of being judged, because if your reputation gets stained in the tribe, then you're kicked out, and there's a death piece. And I wonder if, going back to what you were just asking, if the fear of the risk taking around money and just, maybe losing some money has less weight than the risk of your reputation being tarnished. And I wonder if that's why there's so much more fear around handing stuff off to other people, because we know if we do it, like, we can do a pretty good job. We trust in our own abilities. We've been doing it for years. We've made the mistakes. Like, we've got this code that we trust in. So there's a risk and fear around, like, maybe losing money, but we can get that back, or we can survive without it for an extended period of time.
Or maybe you just back yourself irrationally.
Yeah, well, yeah, all that. That's a mic drop moment. I like that. Yeah.
Well, we just think that we're better than we are.
Yeah, and maybe that's one of the keys to business, having an unfounded confidence. Yeah.
But the other bit I'm wondering about, and it's where I said I think that you're talking about two things which are so integrated here, about that visceral feeling of maybe not so much failure when you get something wrong, but when the company fails and you think, well, and I think that's the connection between your ego and the personality of the company. And that inability to disconnect the two means that anything that happens in the company, you take absolutely personally. As you say, it might even have your name on the business, but even if it doesn't, in the circle of people it might as well have, because they say, oh yeah, that's Wellmeadow, that's Dave and Rich run that, that's their company. And I'm wondering if that's part of what you try and help owners to do, because it hasn't occurred to me before, and I've never had this conversation with an owner, but it just dawned on me as we're talking. Is it something around that connection that's just making them maybe behave irrationally because they're taking everything so personally?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect, more eloquent explanation of what I was just saying. I agree with you completely. Yeah, I think linking you've got this attachment to your business, haven't you? And that's your ego. And if you can't separate the two, yes, you're going to drive and work hard, which is great, but you're also going to set yourself up for a lot of stress and unhappiness, because good luck building a business that doesn't ever have any issues. I mean, like, one of the things I say to people that I work with is, and I my first business was a gym, so I've got a direct experience of this, is if you've got 100 5-star Google reviews and you get one negative review, your brain's not celebrating the 99. No, it's funny, it's irrational. It's going to the statistically irrelevant 1-star review and going, I'm a failure. What have I done? Look at this. It's my reputation. Yeah, I've let them down. It's, and I mean, I've experienced this directly, because before going into business, I was in the military. 5 years in the military, 2 tours of Afghanistan. Right. After that, I went and worked on fishing boats. So easy to say high stress environments.
Yeah, well, I bet they were.
And then I opened a small gym when I came back to the UK, no business knowledge or acumen. And I was the most stressed I've ever been in my life.
No way.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, most people listening I can't compute that. You've been to Afghanistan twice, and you've been out in God knows what storms in the Australian high seas. Yeah. And running a gym top to the lot for stress.
Owning a business because of your ego, because the fear of death is obviously not ideal, but like if you're not ideal. But if you're in Afghanistan, you're working hard, and if it happens, it happens. I'd rather it didn't happen, and maybe I'm downplaying it a bit, Right. And working on fishing boats is the same thing. These waves are coming in, everything's trying to kill you, but you're still working and getting on with it. But when you've got this, your ego's not on the line. Yeah, you're not being judged. Your ego's not on the line.
Shot by someone in the Taliban, it wasn't personal.
Exactly. But when you've got a business, like, your ego's on the line, and if you make it that way, and I certainly did in my first business, and I do to an extent now because I'm a human, but you're putting yourself out there, and it's a very unique psychological situation that
to be judged.
Yeah, to put yourself out there to be judged. And I think it comes back to that thing of at an evolutionary level.
So how do we help business owners then, given that is so hardwired and it is just part of being a business? You are the face of the business, the ambassadorial role or whatever. How do we help businesses, and how does it happen? Because it must happen at some point where a business gets to a certain size where the company just has a personality that isn't as connected to the owner as it is when it's small. People think of it as, well, they own that business, but there's loads of people that work in it. All sorts of things could happen that the owner won't know about. They don't blame the owner anymore. They don't reflect it. Do you think it just you have to wait and just let size fix the problem, or can we help owners to accelerate that process?
I think at an SME level, the most important thing you can do and this might not feel very motivational to people, but I think the very most important thing you can do at the start is get very open with and comfortable with the fact that your business could fail, and that's okay.
Well, that's a toughie.
Yeah, well, none of us want that. None of us want our businesses to fail, but they could fail, and that could be for reasons completely outside of our control. We could be selling a thing that, due to AI now, is no longer relevant. So we could have been selling a fantastic product or service, been working extremely hard on it, built a perfect team around it, been sensible with our investments, built a great client base, et cetera, but then a piece of technology comes along and it makes that thing irrelevant. Now, we could argue that we should have had more foresight and looked into it, but forgetting that, that's what could happen, and that's okay. Doesn't mean it's no reflection of you as a person. So I think if we don't put our head in, if we don't look that demon in the face and get comfortable with it as an option, we're always going to feel a bit stressed. And
so a bit of self-talk a little bit there, really, isn't it? Just to remind yourself that not everything that goes wrong is your fault or will reflect badly on you.
Yeah, because then I think that gets you into a state where you're like, okay, this could happen. Ideally it won't. Now I can start making rational decisions, not emotional decisions.
All right.
Yeah.
And if I could pick sort of a pithy bit of advice out of your book, because I'm attracted by the title of it, if nothing else, Happy Business Revolution. What is it that really you could pick out of that to give people something to cling to after just listening to this, that gets them to think that business it's okay to enjoy being in business?
Well, it's not okay. My pithy bit of advice would be like, what's the point in having a business unless it's going to make you happy? I'm not saying it should be easy and comfortable and that you should have perfect work-life balance and only ever do the work you love and not have to deal with difficult customers or mistakes or errors, but your business should make you happy. And if it doesn't and it's not on a path to, what's the point in having it?
And yet so many, we do a lot of board meetings and so on, and there's sometimes board meetings have got good news, sometimes they've got bad news, right? But generally speaking, we focus on what's going wrong.
Yeah.
So the mood around the place is more negative than it is positive because, we lost that deal, or we've, whatever, something's gone wrong, we've got to fix that machine or whatever it is. And I don't often see business owners in the environment where they're sort of kicking back, pointing their hand or whatever, saying, this is great, I love running this business. I generally see them worrying about this business, scratching their head. And yet, as you say, what's the point of running a business? Well, if that were universally true, that just doesn't fit the owners that I see. They're more spending their time worrying about it and maybe not enjoying it.
Which I think is a problem. I do a lot of reading and go on a lot of masterminds and try to learn as much as I can from other people. And there's a guy called Dan Priestley who's really well known in the business world, and he said something once that really stuck with me, and I repeat it to anybody I work with, and it's that problems replace problems, and the nature of business is just replacing current problems with new problems. So I think this is a really important topic for you to bring up, because if you're in business, if you're committed to going to business, you're always going to be dealing with problems. Whatever problems you've got on your plate right now, you might think they're going to disappear when you've tripled your revenue or doubled your profit or whatever. All that would happen is they just get replaced with new ones. So if your mindset is to default be stressed about what's going wrong, you've got to work on that. Otherwise, well, number one, you're always going to be stressed, because the problem's the game of business isn't to get rid of all your problems. There's a really old book that I love by a guy called Robert Fritz, and it's an old 1980s book, and nobody's heard of it, but I think it's one of the best books ever, and it's called The Path of Least Resistance. And he's all about like the creative process and the human brain, but he's done one for managers and businesses as well. And he's got a quote in that book that's like one of my mantras for life, and it's you can solve all of your problems and still not have what you want. And I think we really need to drill that into our brains, especially if we're going into leadership, management or business, because if we're stressed about the problems and all we're doing is trying to address the problems, we're just setting ourselves up to not be very happy.
Yeah, true.
And I think what we've got to do is, especially at board level, is be like, okay, we've got loads of problems. We always will have loads of problems. Let's work on them in a proactive, positive way. Let's also look at what's gone well. I always start meetings with teams I work with. The first 5 minutes has to be what's gone well, because the very nature of this meeting is we're going to look at all the stuff that's going wrong. So let's look at what's going well first, and then get to problem solving. But if you're not comfortable with problems being present, you're going to be miserable, aren't you? I mean, you and I, like, we're always dealing with problems. It's not just like, oh, here's all this opportunity I get to work every day. There's stuff to fix. Maybe
it's a bit like, social settings, you often hear people say first world problems. Yeah. Okay, it's a problem. You know, I don't happen to have kids at school age, but imagine if you did and they went to private school and the VAT goes on, you know, oh my goodness, VAT, that's a first world problem.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're not going to starve on that, hopefully.
Yeah.
And maybe we need some equivalent in the business world to almost like, what's the equivalent of it being a first world problem? You know, this is just a problem that is natural if you're running a business. It's okay to have this problem. You don't have to wallow in it. It's like, I love that idea that problems replace problems. You know, you fix it, the next one in the priority list will now bubble up to being top problem.
Yeah, and also like I think having so like you just said, like having something to almost compare it to and remind yourself that it's a business problem. It's a first world problem. It's part of the process. It's not an issue that this problem is present.
We're lucky to even be able to have this problem. There are plenty of people that would love to have these problems. And I think of operations similarly. You know, the amount of people that I hear moaning in operations that, we haven't got enough capacity and everything's running late. Well, would you rather not have enough work?
Exactly.
And we're all standing around worrying about who's going to get laid off. You know, it's the right sort of problem to have. Let's cope with that.
We have a mastermind, one of my clients, we have a mastermind with a small group of self-employed electricians, and we're talking to them this morning. And one of the guys was talking about, I just need more sales. I need to bring more leads in. They sell solar fit outs. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, no worries. Like, that's a common problem. I said, but you do know that once you fix that, then you're going to have fulfillment problems and quoting on time problems and having enough team to deliver these job problems.
Or you'll build capacity for that new level, and then you'll drop slightly below what it needs, and you'll need more work again.
Yeah. It's the game. It's a game, isn't it? It's a game of problem solving.
I think that's a good point to end on. Thank you, Mike.
Brilliant.
There's a lot. We've covered a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah.
I should imagine there'll be the odd soundbite that's come out of that. We'll see what they produce.
Look forward to the soundbites.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you very much again, Mike. Mike's come in, Mike Jones, and he's got the Happy Business Revolution that he's bought his book in for. And you mentioned another couple of book name drops in there. Happiness Trap, you mentioned, and The Path of Least Resistance, some others. So we'll try and get the links for those in the show notes.
Fantastic.
And that will give someone some weekend reading to do.
Yep. Thank you for having me on.
Not at all. Thank you for listening as well to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow. As we always say, if anything we've covered today you think might be interesting to somebody else, you know, whether it be in your business, someone else's, or just a bloke in the pub, then let them know or click like or whatever on the various platforms that you see us. But more importantly, good luck and enjoy your business.